At first, I believed I was still dreaming, the kind where something feels slightly off, yet not enough to wake you fully. But there I was sitting upright in my bed, shirt soaked with sweat, unable to understand why I was awake. The darkness of my room was absolute. My fan, which usually ran softly to mask the city's noise, was silenced. A profound stillness filled the air. No ticking clocks, no humming refrigerator, no faint vent noise. Only an eerie silence, so complete I could hear the faint throb within my own head, like muffled sounds underwater. This unsettling quiet marked the beginning of a terrifying sequence that would challenge everything I knew about reality. At first, I believed it was just a dream, the kind that feels slightly off but not enough to wake you fully. Yet, I found myself already sitting up in bed, my shirt soaked with sweat, unsure of why I was awake. The room was enveloped in complete darkness. My fan was silent, an oddity since I always left it running low to drown out street noise. I stayed still, listening intently. As moments passed, I realized something was terribly wrong. The usual background noises, the ticking clock on the wall, the hum of the kitchen fridge, even a faint hiss of the heater vent, were all absent. The silence was so absolute that I could detect a faint pulsing sound inside my head, akin to the noise ears produce underwater. Living alone with my two gerbils, Milo and Chrome, I knew they'd typically be active by this time, scampering about or nibbling on their bedding. But tonight, both sat perfectly motionless side by side in their cage on the floor, their eyes wide open fixed toward the door. At first, this didn't unsettle me. Perhaps they'd simply been startled. In a hushed tone, I asked, "You two okay?" and reached out to unplug my phone from charger. At first, I thought it might be a dream, the kind where everything feels off, but not enough to snap you awake. Yet there I was, sitting up in bed, my shirt damp with sweat, unable to understand why I'd woken. The room was enveloped in darkness, and oddly, my fan was off, a device I habitually left running low to mask the street noise. I waited attentively, only to realize after a full minute that something was profoundly wrong. The usual ambient sounds, the ticking wall clock, the subtle hum of the fridge or heater had vanished entirely. The silence was so absolute that I could hear a faint pulsing inside my head, reminiscent of the underwater muffled ringing in the ears. I live alone with my two gerbils, Milo and Chrome, who were typically active at this hour. But to my unease, they were completely still, perched side by side, eyes wide and fixed toward the door, an unnatural stillness that unsettled me. I softly whispered to them, "You two okay?" as I reached out to take my phone off the charger. The screen lit up on its own, even before I could touch it. Then came a horrifying sound, a screech distorted by static and warped like nothing I'd ever heard before. It was the kind that instinctively makes your body recoil, even when the mind struggles to process why. I fumbled, nearly dropping the phone as it vibrated violently in my hand. On the screen, a stark red alert covered everything. It was nothing like a routine emergency message. No logos, no timestamp, no dismissal option, just bold, rushing block letters demanding attention. Emergency alert. Remain indoors. Do not look outside. Do not use screens or mirrors. Do not engage with any audio sources. Stay low. Stay silent. Threat level extreme. I stared, breath held, attempting to dismiss the alert by tapping buttons. Power, volume, but nothing worked. The warning glowed ominously in my hand, like a blaring siren I couldn't silence. That's when I noticed the room's temperature had plummeted, but this cold was different. It didn't just chill the air. It seeped into my skin, a dreadful feeling, as if something was extracting the warmth itself. The gerbils remained frozen, and a sinister sensation settled over me. I was being watched, not from within the room, but from some presence lurking outside. The message wasn't just a random alert. It was an urgent instruction, a command to stay hidden and silent from an unseen menace. The red glow of the phone seemed to pulse with the room's oppressive cold, entwining silence and dread in a suffocating grip. I quietly moved through my dark apartment, each step light and cautious as I searched for any clue to explain the unnerving alert and the suffocating silence surrounding me. The usual noises that marked my nights, the low hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, even the faint buzz of electronics, had all vanished. In the kitchen, the microwave's display remained black, the stove's digital clock was dead, and my Wi-Fi router flashed a single red light repeatedly, desperately trying to cling to a connection that wasn't there. Suddenly, a scraping noise emerged from outside the window by the sink. It was deliberate and slow, like someone dragging a wet rope across concrete. The sound sent a shiver down my spine. Remembering the alert's warning not to look outside, I stepped back quickly and closed the bedroom door behind me with a soft click. My heart pounded as I moved down the hall, away from any windows, and instinctively reached for the old utility room key I'd kept after helping the landlord months ago. That room was my last refuge. No windows, thick concrete walls, and a heavy door I could lock behind me. I slipped out of my apartment, the cold air biting at my skin, and hurried down the dimly lit corridor. The scraping sound followed, becoming louder and closer as I neared the utility room. I didn't stop until I unlocked the door and slipped inside, locking it behind me. The air inside was thick and sterile, scented faintly with concrete dust and bleach. I sank to the cold floor, clutching Milo and Crumb tightly in their carrier. Silence enveloped the space. No screens, no electronics, just the heavy weight of something unseen pressing in around me. Despite the stillness, I couldn't shake the ominous feeling that I was no longer safe. The danger wasn't outside anymore. It had crept in closer, waiting patiently in the dark. I eased the door shut behind me, the click of the lock echoing softly in the confined space of the utility room. The air was thick with the scent of concrete and bleach, a sterile sharpness that settled heavily around me. This room was small, barely larger than a walk-in closet, its walls coated in cold, rough concrete. A rusted mop sink sat in one corner, and a stack of cardboard boxes was piled near the door. I settled my back against the cool wall and drew the gerbils closer, their tiny bodies trembling slightly in the travel carrier. The fluorescent light above hummed faintly, buzzing in irregular pulses as if struggling to maintain its weak glow. Shadows clung to the corners, soft and shifting, blurring the edges of the room. The cold pressed down on me in waves, permeating deeper than any ordinary chill. It felt as if the air itself was heavy and sluggish, constricting my chest, making each breath a deliberate effort. I could feel the presence more than see it, an oppressive awareness settling in the dimness, a silent watcher lurking just beyond the limits of vision. Suddenly, a faint fluttering sound stirred the silence overhead, like the gentle brushing of moth wings against the light. It came again, softly, then behind me. My grip tightened on the flashlight I didn't remember pulling from my pocket, its beam piercing the murk around me. Yet nothing emerged from the gloom, just the unchanged clutter and concrete walls. Then came the metallic, burnt scent, sharp and unmistakable, weaving through the stale air. A smell like scorched blood mixed with a residue of chemical cleaners. I snapped off the flashlight immediately, recalling the alert's warning to avoid light sources. The dark engulfed me swiftly, folding the room into deep shadows that erased walls and corners. Within that darkness, I heard it a breath, slow, deliberate, close to my ear. Not mine, a separate presence, inhaling softly, moving upward. Slowly, I tilted the flashlight's beam, catching a flicker in the gloom. A shimmering form, oil-like and fluid, bending the air itself. It was unshaped yet unmistakably there, gliding with a haunting calmness. Heart pounding, I shut the light off and curled tighter into the corner, clutching the gerbil carrier as the atmosphere thickened further, weight pressing like a binding force constricting my lungs. Then came the static, soft, irregular, a hiss punctuated with clicks, as if an unseen entity was trying to communicate in broken patterns. I kept still, painfully aware that any sound I made would only provoke it. When I whispered, the static surged, reacting like a living thing. I fell silent, letting the noise fade back to a whisper, the oppressive presence fading a little, but never truly gone. In that suffocating quiet, I waited, trapped between fear and anticipation, knowing that whatever was out there was listening, learning. The utility room was no longer a refuge. It was a threshold, a liminal space where reality felt thin and something far stranger pressed in on all sides. In the oppressive stillness of the utility room, a chilling sound emerged, a faint whisper echoing my own name. It was not a mere figment of my imagination. The voice seemed disembodied, yet hauntingly familiar. The whisper was distorted, slowed down, and stripped of its meaning, as if it had been filtered through layers of static and water. It came from the direction of a mop sink, the place I had tried desperately to avoid looking at. Though my instincts urged silence, the whisper grew louder when I even considered responding, as if the entity was reacting to any sound or movement. It became clear that this presence was not just listening, but was attuned to the very idea of noise, the intention behind it. The realization struck me. This was no ordinary phenomenon. The entity was probing, testing boundaries, perhaps attempting to lure me out or coax a response through my own voice. This unnerving experience deepened to dread, revealing that whatever lurked wasn't a random force, but a sentient one, aware of me and keen on drawing me into its domain. The whisper was a haunting reminder that silence was not only safer, but necessary. Any sound could awaken it and expose me further to its reach. Gradually, the oppressive tension began to ease, yet deep down, I understood that the danger had not truly passed. The suffocating weight lingered in the heavy air, and the unsettling silence felt charged with a sinister presence still watching me. Strange echoes and elusive patterns of sound surfaced faintly, like haunting signals from someplace beyond understanding, intensifying my fear. It became clear that whatever had invaded my space was still observing, lurking just out of sight, waiting, testing me in ways I could barely comprehend. The breach in reality hadn't vanished. It had merely shifted, returning with a quiet, chilling persistence that made every breath feel precarious. I was sitting quietly in the dim hallway, heart hammering in my chest, when I heard it, a soft knock on the front door. Just 2 light taps, almost hesitant. I froze instantly. The silence that followed felt suffocating, pressing in from all sides. Then, a voice, calm and gentle, drifted through the doorframe. "Lena, you okay?" The tone was unmistakably familiar. My neighbor Shelby's voice, the same pitch, the same rhythm from those brief stairwell conversations we'd shared. But I knew she couldn't be here. Shelby had left 2 days ago, packed up and headed to her sister's outside Spokane. Another knock, slower this time. The voice again, "It's just me. Are you all right?" I didn't respond or move, heart rattling louder as fear crept in with each word. No shadow passed beneath the door. No footsteps approached. That oppressive weight returned, the kind that had chased me in the utility room, pressing down like an invisible force, and I pressed myself tighter against the wall, holding my breath. Then, chillingly, the voice shifted ever so slightly. Same calm tone, but a pitch just half a step lower, off, almost mechanical. "Lena, it's cold out here. Please let me in." A scream caught in my throat, not from panic but sheer terror. That subtle slip confirmed all my fears. This wasn't Shelby. Whatever it was mimicking her, trying to trick me, to lure me out into the dark silence. I sank down slowly, crouching low as the alert had instructed, hand clamped tightly over my mouth. No more knocks came, no voices, only the unbearable quiet pressing in around me. As dawn inched closer, my phone suddenly glowed faintly from beneath my pillow. I hesitated before picking it up, the silence in the apartment thick and tense. There it was, a new notification, crisp and unsettling. A final alert stating the critical period had ended but urging continued caution. 7 a.m. Bloomfield District. Critical period has ended. Remain indoors for the next 3 hours. Avoid unfamiliar individuals. Do not mention this event. Do not investigate further. If symptoms occur, seek no treatment. Normal conditions resumed. No agency name, no reassuring contact, just the cold words on the screen. The chilling command to do not mention this event lingered heavily in my mind. It felt like a directive, not only to stay silent, but to erase what had transpired entirely. I placed my phone face down on nightstand, the faint red glow dimming until it vanished, as if drained of energy. Outside, the first birds greeted the morning, their sounds ordinary and peaceful, belying the unsettling truth that what had happened during the night wasn't over. It was merely concealed, its memory forced into silence. Though the world seemed calm again, I knew the presence was still out there, watching, waiting. The final notification's warning echoed relentlessly. Stay silent, stay hidden, and above all, do not speak of what you have seen or heard. At dawn, the world seemed to regain its usual rhythm, yet the unsettling sense that something extraordinary had transpired lingered heavily in the air. The once eerie silence shifted into the quiet aftermath one experiences after a sudden calamity, stillness loaded with unspoken tension and uncertainty about what had been disturbed. The apartment remained devoid of sound. The microwave was still lifeless, its display blank, and the digital clock on the stove remained dark. Though the blinds were drawn, I dared not approach the windows, haunted by the warnings from the previous night. Placing Milo and Crumb back on the desk, I sat on the edge of the bed, my body aching from hours of tension. My mind wrestled with fractured thoughts, as though the pieces of yesterday no longer fit together properly. Then, faintly from beneath my pillow, my phone flickered to life. A new notification appeared silently on the screen. No vibration, no sound, just another alert. Follow-up alert. 6:02 a.m. Bloomfield District. Primary events subsiding. Remain indoors until 7 a.m. Do not use screens or audio devices. Stay silent. Cleanup is underway. Do not acknowledge unfamiliar voices. The final warning chilled me deeply. The voice I heard in the sink, the distorted echo of my own name, was no random apparition. It tested me and would likely persist. I set the phone down, face down on the nightstand, letting the dim red glow bathe the room before slowly fading away. Though my eyes remained open, they saw nothing, trapped by a whirlwind of anxious questions. What did cleanup underway truly mean? How had this unfolded without notice? The silence transformed into a lingering, oppressive weight pressing down on me. I never called anyone. I didn't even try, an instinctive barrier preventing connection, as a part of me already knew no one would answer. Eventually, Milo and Crumb stirred, resuming their normal rhythms. Milo gnawing on a tissue, Crumb burrowing happily in the bedding. Their return to routine was both comforting and deeply unsettling, as though the strange disturbances had been washed away but left invisible scars. If normality had resumed so seamlessly, it suggested this was no isolated incident but a recurring pattern, a spectral storm quietly rolling through and then vanishing without a trace. Venturing into the kitchen with my flashlight, I avoided the temptation to flip any switches. The refrigerator's silence was unnerving, the food lukewarm, the hum absent. Electricity was out. yet the building remained oppressive in its stillness, like the air itself was reluctant to move. Glancing at my wristwatch, the minutes edged toward the end of the advised lockdown period. Standing quietly in the living room, I strained to catch any sign of life. A brief, haunting note echoed faintly, a single, echoing tone reminiscent of someone blowing across a glass bottle. Then silence again. This unplaceable sound gnawed at me, a mystery wrapped in an unshakable feeling of unease. Suddenly, a soft knock came at my door, once then twice. Frozen, I pressed myself into the hallway wall, heart pounding as a voice, soft and familiar, spoke. "Lena, are you okay?" It mimicked my neighbor Shelby's voice perfectly, but I knew she had left town days ago. The second knock followed, and the voice pleaded gently, yet something was disturbingly wrong. The pitch subtly dipped, betraying the deception. The fear that crept through me was absolute. I slid to the floor, clutching myself in silence. When the knocking ceased and a voice faded, I knew the danger had not passed. It was lurking nearby, learning and waiting. Returning to my bedroom, I found respite in the quiet normalcy of my sleeping gerbils, but the dread persisted, a shadow cast over a world pretending nothing had ever happened. I initially believed it was just a dream, the kind that feels off but not enough to fully wake you. Yet there I was, sitting upright in bed, drenched in sweat for no discernible reason. The room around me was pitch black and unnervingly silent. No fan humming, no street noise, no ticking clock, nor the low buzz of the fridge or heater vents. The silence was so complete, I could hear my own heartbeat echo, as if underwater. Living alone with my two gerbils, Milo and Chrome, I expected to find them scurrying or nibbling their bedding, but they sat motionless, eyes wide, both glaring unblinkingly toward the door. This stillness unsettled me more than any sudden movement would have. When my phone lit up abruptly with a harsh, red emergency alert, I tried to dismiss it, but it wouldn't budge. The message warned, remain indoors, avoid screens, mirrors, and any audio sources. Stay low and silent. Threat level extreme. The room's temperature plummeted, not just cold air, but an invasive chill seeping into my bones. A feeling of being watched pressed on me, an unseen presence outside the room. As I cautiously navigated my powerless apartment, the ominous quiet prevailed. Technology had failed. Microwaves dead, clocks blank, Wi-Fi flashing a desperate red. A scratching sound outside, slow and deliberate like wet rope dragged over concrete, made me retreat and hide in the building's small utility room, a windowless concrete shelter with faint buzzing from a backup light overhead. Inside, clutching my gerbils, I felt the atmosphere grow heavier, oppressive, as strange sounds reacted to my silence. Whispered repetitions of my own name echoed unnervingly from the mop sink's metallic surface, slowed and distorted, as if the presence was testing me, listening for my response. Speaking only intensified the static's volume. Sound itself had become a beacon. Hours seemed to stretch infinitely in the dim. Enclosed room before the oppressive presence loosened its grip, though unseen eyes still watched. Darkness enveloped me completely when the overhead light suddenly died. A breath, a slow inhale, circled near my ear. Then above me, shimmering shapes bending light oddly. The flashlight I instinctively turned on revealed nothing, yet the metallic, burnt scent mixed with the overpowering silence told me this wasn't a natural phenomenon. Eventually, emboldened, I left my refuge and returned to the apartment. The dead silence had turned into an uneasy aftermath, the world holding its breath. Another alert warned that the primary event was subsiding. Cleanup was underway, but not to acknowledge unfamiliar voices or mention the event. A chilling directive of enforced silence and compliance. My gerbil's behaviors normalized suddenly, as though the episode had been erased from their memories and mine. Days later, after the city had resumed its normal hum, I explored the silent halls and found a plain notice taped behind an exit, urging residents not to discuss or document the night's mysterious happenings, further deepening the strange secrecy. Digging deeper, I uncovered an obscure forum thread from years ago, recounting similar experiences: midnight disruptions involving strange artificial voice patterns, warnings to avoid sound and reflections, and inexplicable voice mimics that horrified those affected. Users called it not a simple glitch, but a leak, a breach in the fabric of reality itself. This revelation shattered any hope for a mundane explanation. These were neither hauntings nor technical failures, but infiltrations from another reality, where the rules diverge from our own. Attempts to communicate or investigate only drew attention, invitations to something lurking beyond perception. In my utility room, an ominous message carved into the concrete wall sealed the dread. "Don't listen to your own voice." It confirmed what I feared. This wasn't random. Others before me had encountered it, faced the echoing distortions of their voices, and some hadn't made it back. Now, even after the chaos, a new warning appeared, etched in fog on my bathroom mirror. "We remember you," a silent reminder that the ordeal and the entity behind it had not forgotten me, determined not to succumb to forced amnesia. I am transcribing this account by hand, hoping that if this terror returns, someone else will know. They are not alone, and above all, they have been hurt. At first, it felt like a dream slipping through my grasp, the kind where something feels just off enough to unsettle you, yet eludes full comprehension. But I was awake, sitting up in bed, my shirt damp with sweat, caught in a dark room that hummed with an unnerving stillness. My usual comforts were absent. The fan was off, the clock silent, and even the heater vent mute. An eerie quiet settled so deep that I could hear the faint pulse within my own head. Living alone with my two gerbils, Milo and Chrome, I found them frozen beside their cage, their eyes locked onto the door as though wary of something unseen. It was then my phone buzzed to life with a sharp red emergency alert, its warning clear and chilling. Stay indoors, avoid screens and mirrors, and above all, remain silent. The room's temperature plummeted to an unnatural cold, a chill that seemed to drain the warmth from my body rather than just the air around me. As I explored my darkened apartment, all electronics lay dead, leaving an unsettling void in the space where technology should breathe life. From outside came a slow, deliberate scraping sound, ominous and creeping. Heeding the alert's command, I refrained from looking outside, retreating instead to an old windowless utility room, a space that once offered shelter but now felt more like a cage. Within its cold concrete confines, the oppressive atmosphere thickened. Sounds that shouldn't have responded seemed to shift in reaction to my own silence. When I dared to whisper, a disembodied voice mimicked my own, echoing my name in warped, watery tones from the metal sink beside me. The realization struck heavy. This presence was not only aware of me, but was attuned to noise itself, reacting to even the faintest sounds with a sinister awakening. Time lost meaning as the light above me flickered and dimmed, transforming the room into an abyss where shapes warped and shadows became threatening rather than reassuring. Breathing grew difficult, as if an unseen weight pressed upon my chest. Then there was darkness, complete, all-encompassing, and right beside my ear, a breath, slow, deliberate, unmistakably real. A faint glimmer shimmered in the air, a ripple bending the lights strangely, like oil floating over water, hinting at a presence neither wholly physical nor entirely spectral. I held still, knowing movement or sound might invite worse consequences. Eventually, the oppressive tension receded, the alert's glow faded, and power silently returned to my home. Yet, the experience had carved deep marks into my mind. Signs pointed toward a phenomenon far stranger than a mere blackout or power failure. Investigating further, I stumbled upon an old forum thread describing similar events. Voices mimicking loved ones, warnings dissuading engagement with reflections or sounds, and mysterious disappearances. This was no simple anomaly. It was a leak in reality itself, a breach where our world failed to keep the fringe entities at bay. Not ghosts or hallucinatory echoes, but something alien, an uninvited seepage that tested boundaries by sensing our sounds and intentions, manipulating voice and silence alike to pull us toward it. The haunting confirmation came unexpectedly, scrawled into the cinder block wall of the utility room were words etched by an invisible hand, a desperate plea warning. Don't listen to your own voice. And now, even after the silence has returned and the sun has risen, I find chilling proof that the breach is not confined to the past. Written in fog on my bathroom mirror, a final message waits. We remember you. This leak in reality remains, lurking in the spaces between sounds and shadows, a terrifying reminder that some boundaries are thinner than they seem, and once broken, cannot so easily be mended. Later, after the eerie silence had settled back into a deceptive calm, I noticed something new in the bathroom. I hadn't even taken a shower, yet a message was etched in the fog on the mirror's surface. The words were chillingly clear. We remember you. There was no sound accompanying it, no hint of movement, just that cold, haunting message, waiting for me in a one place I least expected. It was as if the presence that had intruded into my world wanted to remind me it hadn't vanished, that it knew I had heard it, that the memory of those terrifying hours hadn't faded as the city outside resumed its false normalcy. I sat down and began writing everything by hand on paper. No screens, no devices, hoping to create a record immune to deletion or erasure. Maybe no one will ever find this note. Maybe it will disappear as silently as the alerts did on my phone. Or perhaps someone will discover it hidden away under the floorboard someday, during the next time the static returns and the glass begins whispering again. If that happens, I want whoever finds these words to know one thing. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And whatever it is, whatever listens in the silence, it already knows you heard it. In the end, the protagonist commits their harrowing experience to paper, deliberately avoiding digital means to resist the erasure that followed the event. They leave this handwritten account hidden beneath the floorboards, hoping it will serve as a warning or source of solace for anyone who might face this same unfathomable terror in the future. Acknowledging the chilling reality that the event might repeat and that memories could be wiped clean, they want others to know that they are not imagining it, not alone, and that the ominous presence is ever aware when it has been heard. If this story captivated you and provoked your thoughts, please consider subscribing, liking, or sharing your reflections. Your support truly matters.